She stared straight at me and said, "You don't belong here." Even though I paid for their entire wedding, I just smiled and made a few calls. When they arrived, there was nothing. No food, no flowers, no wedding. You don't embarrass me and still expect a happy ending. This isn't just a story about a canceled wedding. It's a story about a lifetime of quiet sacrifice, and the earth-shattering moment I finally realized I was being used. Not just for my money, but for my very soul. And the moment I found out, I wasn't just pulling the plug on a party. I was detonating a lifetime of unspoken resentment, starting with a single chilling text message that dared to tell me I didn't belong. My name is Claire Preston, and for 38 years, I've been the responsible one. On paper, I'm doing well. A successful accounting firm, a quiet home. But in my family, I was never the favorite. That title belonged to my younger brother, Daniel, the golden boy. He was charming, even when he wasn't trying, always met with excuses. "He's just a boy," my mom would say, laughing off his messes. "You were never like that, Claire." No, I wasn't allowed to be. From the age of 9, my role was clear. Accommodate, be patient, give way. "Claire, you're older. You should know better." That phrase became the soundtrack to my life. A series of quiet forfeits. The last cookie, the broken birthday gift, praise for things I'd actually done. By high school, while Daniel struggled, I graduated with honors, got a scholarship to a top university. My parents barely made my ceremony. My dad had work, my mom had a cold, Daniel had baseball. I sat there in my cap and gown, watching other families swarm their kids, and I told myself it didn't matter. It did. It mattered a lot. But I stayed quiet. That was my role. I built my life brick by brick. No help from my parents. Daniel, though? When he dropped out of college, they didn't blink. When he crashed his car and needed a loan, $5,000, no hesitation. I never asked why I didn't get that kind of help. I already knew. You're the one we don't have to worry about. It wasn't until my late 20s, after a 4-year relationship ended with my boyfriend saying I was great, just not exciting, that the pattern truly cut deep. Being stable, generous, reliable. It didn't make me lovable, it made me forgettable. I felt invisible. But still I kept the peace. I called my mom, remembered birthdays, always showed up. I helped Daniel with resumes, cheered him on, even when he got laid off. This was just what big sisters did, right? Then he met Madison. She was younger, polished, always on her phone, working in event coordination, though vague about what she actually did. The first time we met, she gave me a once-over that felt cold. Even then, something about her reminded me of people who saw me as useful but not worthy. But when they got engaged, I didn't hesitate. My first thought wasn't jealousy, it was, how can I help? I wanted to matter. They were stressing about venue costs, catering, photography. So I stepped in. "Let me handle it," I said. "Consider it my wedding gift." They were stunned. Daniel hugged me. Madison cried. My mom said, "Claire, that's so generous of you." For the first time in years, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I was finally in. But in my family, generosity was never reciprocated. It was expected. And love? That was handed out to the ones who demanded it loudest. I didn't know it then, but everything I thought I was building was about to be set on fire. And it would start with those 8 simple words. "You don't belong here." This time I wasn't walking away quietly. It was about 6 months after that quiet moment in my kitchen, after my breakup, when Daniel called. I was watching rain drip down the window, a cooling coffee in my hand, when his name lit up my phone. He didn't call often. "She said yes," he shouted, pure excitement in his voice. "We're engaged." I blinked. My automatic response was both sincere and oddly practiced. "I'm happy for you, Daniel." 2 weeks later, I met Madison for dinner. She chose the place, modern and trendy, where wine came in fish bowls. She was perfectly poised, gracious at first glance. But there was a stiffness to her smile, a coolness in her tone when she spoke to me, calling me Claire with the same energy you'd use for a front desk clerk. Still, I made the effort, asking about the proposal, the wedding plans. Her answers were brief, efficient, barely masking annoyance when Daniel interrupted with a joke. She laughed, but not with her eyes. I'd seen women like her before, polished, composed, quietly calculating. After dinner, I offered to cover the bill. She didn't protest, didn't even thank me. Just a nod like it was expected. Later that night, Daniel called. He confessed they were freaking out about the budget. She wants it to be perfect, he said apologetically. But everything's so expensive. We might have to scale back. I listened, then surprised even myself. Let me help, I said. Let me cover it. Venue, catering, cake, photography, flowers, whatever you two want. No strings attached. Think of it as my gift. He was silent, then a whisper. You're serious? Completely, I said. Just promise me one thing. Make it a day worth remembering. That's all I want. I don't need speeches, I don't need a spotlight. I just want to be there. He finally whispered, I love you, sis. It was one of the few times he'd ever said it without prompting. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into the logistics. Madison sent links and photos, usually through Daniel. When I reached out to her directly, she was polite but curt. I chalked it up to wedding stress. I signed every contract, paid every deposit, making sure my name, number, and email were the primary contact for all vendors. My lawyer even drafted a simple clause. No transfers, no changes without my written approval. Not because I expected betrayal, but because a lifetime of being a background character taught me to prepare for anything. One afternoon, as we finalized the venue, a beautiful estate with lush gardens, Daniel came by to thank me. He brought flowers, which was rare. I don't know how we'll ever repay you, he said. You don't have to, I told him, meaning it. I just want to see you happy. I don't need credit, Daniel. I'm not here to be noticed. I'm just here to help. And I believed it. Every word. I had no idea this simple act of love would be the very thing they'd use to push me out. I was just handing over the keys to a perfect wedding, and all I asked for was a place in the room. The week after I signed the last vendor contract, Madison called. Her voice was unusually sweet, almost performative. I wanted to ask you something, she said. Something special. I was in my office break room, holding a microwaved lunch I no longer felt hungry for. Of course, I replied. What is it? I'd love for you to be my maid of honor. I paused, genuinely surprised. Up until then, she hadn't shown much interest in including me. Most interactions were through Daniel or clipped emails. But now, suddenly, she wanted me standing beside her? That's really kind of you, I said slowly. She laughed lightly. Well, you've done so much already. It just makes sense. Something about it felt transactional, like a thank you card given out of obligation. But I pushed that feeling down and said, yes. I threw myself into the role. I took notes, built spreadsheets, researched stylists, even paid for a professional makeup trial for her and the bridesmaids. She barely responded. Sometimes I'd send an idea, and all I'd get back was a thumbs up or a flat thanks. Other times, I'd find out she'd made decisions behind my back. I spent 2 hours organizing poses for a bridal shoot, only to discover she'd booked someone else with a completely different vision. When I brought it up, she said, "Oh, I didn't want to bother you with all the little details." I smiled and said I understood, but I didn't. Daniel wasn't much help either. He avoided my calls, answered texts hours later with flimsy excuses. Sorry, things are crazy. Once, I dropped by their apartment unannounced with fabric samples. Daniel opened the door, saw me, and hesitated. Just for a moment, but it was enough. Inside, Madison was laughing on a video call. The mood was light. My presence shifted it. She muted the call, smiled too wide. "Claire, you should have told us you were coming." They exchanged a quick glance. I stayed for 10 awkward minutes, pretending not to notice the tension. Later, scrolling through the bridesmaids group chat Madison had added me to, I saw it. Most of the planning was happening there without my input. A photo of new bridesmaid dresses in a completely different color. No one had said a word to me. I texted Daniel privately. "Hey, are we still going with lilac? The group chat says blush now." He didn't reply until the next day. Yeah, Madison changed her mind. Sorry, it all happened quickly. Something was shifting. It wasn't a lightning strike, it was slower, colder, like a door quietly closing behind me while I was still standing inside the room. I decided to be direct. I called them both and we met at a coffee shop. Madison was immaculate as always. Daniel looked tired, fidgeting. "Is everything okay?" I asked, choosing my words carefully. "I feel like I'm stepping on toes. You two have been distant, and some decisions are happening without me." Madison looked up, her smile polite but empty. Claire, we appreciate everything you've done truly. But wedding planning is stressful. You don't need to take it personally. I'm not upset, I said gently, just confused. I thought we were a team. Daniel finally spoke. It's nothing, Claire. Honestly, you've done more than enough. Don't stress. That should have reassured me, but it didn't. As I drove home, my chest felt heavy. Still, I told myself I was probably overthinking. Maybe it was normal. I let it go. At that point, I still believed the best in them. I still believed I had a seat at their table. A week later, still trying to convince myself things would settle, I was cleaning up dinner and scrolling through my phone when I saw it. Madison had just posted a new photo on Instagram. A bright, heavily filtered selfie of her and another woman I vaguely recognized from a bridal fitting. They were holding champagne flutes, all glammed up. The caption read, "My maid of honor. Couldn't imagine this day without you." My hands froze mid-scroll. I read it again, then a third time. It wasn't me. No call, no message, no explanation. Replaced publicly, quietly, as if I had never been part of it. I sat there, heart pounding. I scrolled through the comments. Congratulations. Compliments for the new maid of honor. Not a single mention of me. Erased without warning. I called Daniel immediately. Did you see Madison's post? His voice was casual, like nothing had happened. Yeah. Why didn't anyone tell me? He sighed like I was making a big deal out of nothing. Look, Madison felt like she needed someone closer. You know, like a best friend, not just family. I was the maid of honor. I said, my voice tight. She asked me. I've been helping with everything. I know, and we really appreciate that, he cut in. But this is more of a symbolic thing for her. You're still invited. You'll have a seat at the ceremony. A seat? You know what I mean, he said, brushing it off. You're still family. That word, family, rang in my ears like a mockery. I hung up. He didn't try to call back. That night I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the weight of it all pressing down. It wasn't just the title. It was being discarded without even a conversation. Used for my support, my time, my money, then cast aside when the spotlight came. The next day I drove to see my mother. I needed something, support, understanding. She was flipping through a magazine. I told her what happened. Her reaction wasn't what I expected. She sighed, didn't even look up. Claire, don't make this about you. I'm not. But don't you think it's strange she didn't even tell me? She's under stress. It's her big day. You paid for everything, Mom. And that was generous of you, but you did it out of love, right? So don't hold it over them. Sometimes it's best to just let things go. Her words stung in a different way. They confirmed what I had always known. My job was to give quietly, without complaint, without recognition. Even now, clearly wounded, I was expected to stay quiet, be mature, let others take the spotlight no matter the cost. I left her house and drove home in silence. Only when the house was dark and I was alone did it hit me. A quiet kind of grief. No tears, just a numb ache. They hadn't just changed the title, they had changed the message. I wasn't important enough to be informed. I wasn't worthy of an explanation. I was good enough to fund the fairy tale, but not good enough to be part of it. 3 days passed. I hadn't spoken to Daniel, hadn't looked at Madison's social media. I was trying and failing to get back to normal. Then on a quiet Thursday afternoon, Vanessa called. My college friend, we drifted. Her voice was warm but hesitant. Claire, hey. I just saw Madison's wedding post. I didn't know you were involved. I laughed dryly. I'm not anymore. She hesitated again. I need to tell you something. And I'm sorry I didn't put it together earlier. I sat up straighter. What do you mean? It's about Madison, she said quietly. Do you remember when you and Eric broke up? Eric. His name hit me like a slap. My longest relationship, the one I'd pictured a life with. He ended it abruptly after 3 years. No cheating, no big fight, just fallen out of love. I'd spent months blaming myself. Yeah, of course I remember, I said cautiously. Vanessa took a breath. After you two broke up, I ran into him at a bar. He was with someone. I didn't think much of it then, but now, seeing Madison's face on all these wedding posts, it clicked. There was a long pause before she said it. Claire, I'm almost certain the woman he left you for was Madison. I didn't speak. My mind raced, flipping through hazy memories. Eric acting strange, late nights, changing passwords. The one time his phone lit up on the counter, I'd seen a name I didn't recognize. I thought it was a coworker. Are you sure? I asked, my voice tight. I'd bet on it, Vanessa said. And the timing matches. She was living in the same neighborhood, working at that marketing firm downtown. Everything around me suddenly felt louder. The fridge humming. A car passing. The tick of the clock. I felt cold. She knew who I was, I said, almost to myself. Madison? She knew I was Eric's ex from the beginning. My heart pounded. Images flashed. Her polite smiles, her distant eyes, always a little too composed. I thought she was just uptight, but now I saw it for what it was. Control. She had played a long game. She hadn't just removed me from the bridal party out of preference. She had never wanted me there to begin with. She knew who I was and still said yes when Daniel introduced us. She let me fund her entire wedding, knowing full well what she had done to me years before. I stood up, pacing, adrenaline rushing. There were no more excuses. This wasn't an oversight. This wasn't a stressed bride. It was deliberate. Everything, the sudden switch, the silence, Daniel's distance, now made terrifying sense. She was never going to let me be part of that day. She had smiled through it all, played nice, just long enough to get what she wanted from me. And I'd given it willingly, believing we were building something honest. Claire, I'm so sorry, Vanessa said. Don't be, I said quietly. You just helped me see things clearly. Because now, for the first time since this mess began, I wasn't confused. I wasn't hurt. I wasn't questioning myself. I was angry. And anger, when you've spent your whole life being quiet, obedient, and overlooked, is dangerous. Because once you've been betrayed, truly betrayed, you stop asking questions. You start making decisions. Claire didn't sleep much that night. After Vanessa's revelation, she spent hours replaying old memories with new clarity. Madison's tight-lipped smiles, her constant sidesteps, the way she always seemed to know how far to stand to avoid any real connection. Claire realized she had misread everything. Madison hadn't merely excluded her. She had planned this, patiently, calculatedly. She knew exactly what she was doing. The morning air was still when Claire woke up, her eyes gritty, but her mind frighteningly clear. She didn't cry. She didn't pace. She simply showered, dressed, and made a pot of coffee. She had a quiet day ahead, and she was going to make every minute count. The message came just after 8 a.m. from Madison's number, though clearly composed in that sterile tone that masked cruelty with politeness. Hi, Claire. I hope you're well. After some discussion, Daniel and I have decided to keep the wedding small and intimate. We've decided not to include extended family or anyone outside the bridal party. We appreciate everything you've done, truly, and hope you understand. Best, Madison. Claire read it once. Then again. No call, no conversation. Just a text. After all the planning, the payments, the hours spent reviewing floral arrangements and cake samples. Not even the decency of a phone call. And Daniel? Nothing. She waited 15 minutes before texting him directly. Is this true? No reply. Another hour passed. Claire stared at the last message she'd sent him days ago. Still marked read. He had seen it. He had chosen silence. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Madison. Just to clarify, it's nothing personal. We just want to keep things simple and drama-free. We hope you can respect our decision and not bring unnecessary stress to the day. Claire's thumb hovered over the screen. She didn't write a paragraph. She didn't ask questions. She replied with 5 words. Then I'll play my part. She set the phone down, took another sip of coffee, then reached across the counter and pulled out the neatly organized wedding folder she had built over the last few months. Every contract, every invoice, every deposit, every receipt. Each one printed in her name. Not Daniel, not Madison. Claire. She opened her laptop, pulled up the email threads, highlighted the vendor list. Venue, caterer, florist, photographer, DJ, rentals, bakery, coordinator. She picked up the phone and called the venue first. Good morning, Willow Heights Event Center. This is Heather. How can I help? Yes, Claire said calmly. This is Claire Whitmore. I'm calling regarding the Mitchell wedding on the 17th. I'd like to cancel the reservation. I understand the deposit is non-refundable. There was a pause. Heather's tone shifted. Oh, I see. May I ask the reason? Change of plans, Claire replied. And as the sole contract holder, I'd like all correspondence to go through me. No one else is authorized to make updates. Understood. I'll send you a confirmation email within the hour. Claire thanked her and hung up. She exhaled slowly. Then she moved on to the caterer. Then the florist. Then the tent rental company. The DJ was confused but obliging. The photographer sounded surprised but professional. The bakery was polite though slightly annoyed. Each call chipped away at what Madison and Daniel had spent months curating, but what Claire had truly built. Because they had crafted a fantasy, yes, but it was Claire who had funded it, signed it, secured it. And now, with a steady surgical hand, she was dismantling it. Not with rage, not with screaming. With precision. By early afternoon it was done. Claire stood in her kitchen, looking over the notes she had jotted down on a yellow notepad. A dozen names crossed out. Times noted. Emails confirmed. She hadn't cried. She hadn't cursed. She had simply removed herself. And in doing so, she had removed everything else. They wanted her out of the picture. So be it. She would erase her presence so thoroughly, they'd feel the cold of her absence like a windstorm. Because there's something people forget about the quiet ones. We don't explode. We don't perform. We calculate. And when the time comes, we make sure silence hits louder than any scream. The day before the wedding, Claire's phone was quiet. Too quiet. She had half expected a text from Daniel, maybe a passive-aggressive message from Madison. But there was nothing. Just silence. Claire wasn't surprised. That silence wasn't peace. It was ignorance. They still didn't know. Somewhere around noon it began. Daniel had gone to the venue to meet with the planner for a final walkthrough. It was supposed to be a brief stop. Instead, he was greeted by a locked gate and a confused groundskeeper. No wedding here tomorrow, the man had said. The reservation was canceled days ago. Daniel thought it was a mistake. He made calls. No one picked up. He drove around to the back entrance, only to find the lawn bare. No tents, no floral trucks, no deliveries. Nothing. It hit him then, not just that something was wrong, but that everything was gone. He called Madison. She screamed before she even said hello. Claire didn't know exactly what was said, but she imagined Madison's voice rising into that familiar shrill pitch she'd always masked with fake sweetness. Madison tried calling the caterer. Voicemail. The florist? Cancelled. The photographer? Madison's mother tried the rental company. Voicemail informed her the reservation had been nullified per contract terms. Then finally Claire's phone rang. It wasn't Madison. It wasn't Daniel. It was their mother. Claire stared at the screen as it vibrated. She let it ring once, twice. Then she answered. Her mother's voice came through, sharp and panicked. Claire, what did you do? Claire didn't answer right away. She took a breath, standing by her apartment window watching cars pass. What did you do? Her mother repeated louder this time. Daniel said the wedding is ruined. Everything's been cancelled. Are you behind this? Claire's voice was steady. Calm. Almost too calm. You should ask the people you chose to defend instead of me. Her mother paused. Claire, this is your brother's wedding. Claire's voice dropped an octave. Yes. The one I paid for. The one I was uninvited from. You're overreacting, her mother hissed. This is Madison's big day. You've made your point. No, Claire cut in, her voice steel now. I haven't. Not yet. There was a silence so thick it felt like it hummed. Her mother's tone changed. They're talking about legal action. Daniel's lawyer cousin said you could be liable for damages. Claire walked to her kitchen, picked up the wedding folder still sitting on her counter. She opened the front pocket, pulled out the stack of signed contracts. She had scanned them already, compiled into a neat PDF labeled and time-stamped. I just sent you an email, Claire said. Open it. Her mother fumbled on the other end. A pause, then a quiet, tight voice. These are all in your name. Every last one, Claire replied. Venue, catering, rentals, flowers, music, photography. All of it. You never transferred anything to them. No. Why would I? They never asked. And after all, I was still supposed to be involved, wasn't I? Her mother was quiet again. Claire could hear voices in the background. Madison sobbing. Daniel shouting into his phone. They tried to cut me out of my own investment, Claire said. So I withdrew it. Her mother sounded smaller than Claire had ever heard her. They have nothing now. Guests are flying in tomorrow. People are expecting. They should have thought of that before they sent me that message. Her mother tried one last time. Claire, this will follow you. People will talk. Let them. Claire hung up. She didn't slam the phone. She didn't cry. She set it down gently, walked back to the window and stood quietly, watching the shadows shift across the street. Tomorrow was supposed to be their perfect day. Now it would be the day they learned you don't cut out the person holding all the strings. Not unless you're prepared to watch everything fall. City Hall on a Friday afternoon wasn't meant to feel tragic. But there was something undeniably hollow in the air that day. The lobby smelled of floor polish and faded flowers. A small group of guests shuffled in with muted voices and confused glances, trying to understand why the grand wedding had been reduced to a cramped government room with folding chairs and a judge in a dated black robe. Claire arrived early. She didn't wear black. This wasn't a funeral, even if it felt like one. She wore a simple navy blue dress, elegant and understated. No makeup, no jewelry, no fanfare. She stood in the back of the room, unnoticed by most, and she preferred it that way. The room held no music, no decorations, just a row of metal chairs, a long table with a few documents, and a bouquet that looked like it had been picked up at a grocery store. The guests whispered among themselves. Some looked irritated, others bewildered. The older relatives in particular seemed confused, clearly expecting something grander. Madison entered first, clinging tightly to Daniel's arm. Her hair was pulled up hastily, makeup slightly smudged. Her expression was tense, her smile forced. Daniel looked worse, pale, withdrawn, eyes darting as if searching for an exit. Claire didn't say a word. She didn't need to. She simply stood at the back wall, arms crossed, gently watching. The ceremony began without much preamble. The officiant cleared his throat and started reading from the standard script. No music, no processional, just words that felt increasingly empty. Claire noticed the sideways glances. People whispering as they recognized her. She could see it in their eyes, questions forming, confusion mounting. Some guests looked down at their programs, as if the paper might offer answers. But there were no programs. Nothing had been planned. Then came the moment no one expected. Beverly, Daniel and Claire's aunt, stood up in the second row. 72 years old, widowed twice, with a personality that once got her banned from bingo night for aggressive honesty. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She simply looked at the bride and groom and said, "Is no one going to say anything?" The judge paused mid-sentence. Everyone turned. Madison froze. Beverly folded her arms. "You kicked out your sister, the one who paid for everything. She's standing right there. And we're just supposed to sit here and pretend this isn't humiliating." A sharp inhale swept the room. Daniel looked like someone had struck him in the chest. Madison opened her mouth, then closed it. Her face turned a shade paler. Beverly continued, unshaken. "I canceled my hip surgery to attend your wedding. I was told it would be at Willow Heights. I bought a new dress, spent money on a hotel, and now we're all sitting in a courthouse because you couldn't be decent to the person who made it all possible." A few people murmured. Claire saw Uncle Richard nod slowly in agreement. Still, she didn't speak. She simply held Beverly's gaze, offering the faintest smile, a thank you without words. Madison finally whispered, "We didn't mean to." But Beverly cut her off. "No, you meant every bit of it. Don't you dare insult our intelligence. Claire didn't even have to show up today. But she did. And the way you're looking at her right now like she's the problem? Shame on you." Daniel's shoulders slumped. His hands trembled as he stared down at his shoes. The judge awkwardly cleared his throat again. "Shall we proceed?" No one responded. Claire could have spoken then. Could have twisted the knife. But she didn't. She didn't need to. The room had turned. Not in fury, but in disappointment. In quiet recognition that something had been lost that no vows could recover. The ceremony limped forward. The words were spoken. The paper signed. No applause, no joy. Just a cold, bureaucratic ending to what had once been a dream. As the couple posed reluctantly for a photo outside City Hall, Claire stepped out the side entrance. She didn't linger. She didn't say goodbye. Her silence was louder than any speech, and for once, Daniel wasn't the golden child. Everyone had seen the truth, and it had walked out the door in a navy dress, head held high. Claire didn't expect to go viral. She hadn't even known a video existed until her coworker texted her Monday morning with the words, "Girl, you're on TikTok, and it's glorious." The video had been posted by one of the younger cousins, a tech-savvy teenager who had recorded the now infamous moment at City Hall when Aunt Beverly stood and publicly called out Daniel and Madison. The footage was shaky, taken from a phone clutched too tight, but the audio was crisp. Beverly's voice rang clear. "You kicked out your sister, the one who paid for everything. She's standing right there. And we're just supposed to sit here and pretend this isn't humiliating." By the end of the clip, you could see Daniel's pale face, Madison's frozen smile, and Claire standing silently in the back, eyes steady, expression unreadable. The video took off overnight. At first a few hundred views, then thousands. By the end of the day, it had surpassed 250,000. By midweek, it had over 2 million views and was being reposted across platforms with hashtags like #KarmaFail, #OurSponsorSister, and #CityHallDrama. And the comments? Brutal, unrelenting, and entirely on Claire's side. "Imagine not inviting the person who paid for your wedding. I'd cancel it too. She paid for everything and got kicked out? Nah, I'd burn it to the ground. Justice for Claire." The bride looks like she's about to cry because karma showed up in heels. Even major creators began stitching the video, reacting with outrage, support, and disbelief. A family therapist did a breakdown on the dynamics. A lawyer explained how Claire had every legal right to cancel. A popular financial influencer praised Claire's restraint, calling it the quietest, coldest revenge and the most deserved. Madison's social media turned into a war zone. Her Instagram, once carefully curated, was flooded with angry comments and sarcastic emojis. She tried turning off comments, then made her account private, but the internet doesn't forget. Screenshots circulated anyway. Her follower count began to drop. Brands she'd hoped to collaborate with quietly ghosted her. Even friends from her bridal party unfollowed her publicly, one of them captioning their action with "Can't stand behind that kind of behavior." Daniel didn't fare much better. While not very active online, his workplace was buzzing. The video had made it to a Reddit thread one of his coworkers followed. By Tuesday, someone had printed out a meme from the video and pinned it to the breakroom bulletin board. He walked into hushed conversations. People lowered their voices when he entered a room. One colleague joked during lunch, "Hey Dan, if I buy you coffee, do I get to sit with you or will I get uninvited next week?" Daniel didn't laugh. He stopped coming in by Thursday. Claire stayed quiet. She didn't comment. She didn't repost. She didn't defend herself or fuel the fire. She didn't need to. The world had already taken her side. What surprised her more was how her extended family responded. Some, of course, tried to stay neutral, those who hated conflict or clung to the idea of forgiveness. But more and more began reaching out to her directly. Aunt Jean left a voicemail. "I always thought you were the backbone of that family. I see it now clearer than ever." Uncle Richard sent an email. "If you ever throw your own party, I want an invitation and I'm bringing my checkbook." Even her father, stoic, difficult, rarely expressive, called one evening. He didn't apologize directly, but he said, "I didn't see it before. I do now. And I'm sorry you had to be the one to show us." For years, Claire had felt like a shadow in her own family. Someone expected to give, to support, to disappear when convenient. Now for the first time her absence had weight. Her silence had power. And the world quite literally had taken notice. Claire didn't expect to see him again, at least not this soon and not like this. It was a rainy Tuesday when Daniel showed up. No warning, no text, just a quiet knock on her front door. When she opened it, he stood there in damp jeans and a hoodie, hands stuffed deep in his pockets, eyes red-rimmed and tired. She didn't say anything, just stepped aside and let him in. He didn't sit right away, lingering by the entryway like a guest, unsure he was welcome. She returned to the living room and resumed folding laundry on the couch, Not rushing, not performing, just letting silence stretch long enough to force him to gather courage. Finally he spoke. I messed up. Still she didn't answer. He tried again. You were right about her. About everything. She didn't look up, but he could tell she was listening. I knew she didn't like you, he said, voice quiet. Even before the engagement she said you were intimidating, that you took over every room. She called you cold, distant, said you always made her feel like she was less than. Claire turned over a sweater in her lap. She said nothing. Daniel continued, pacing slightly. At first I defended you. I told her you were just reserved, strong. But then she started asking me not to invite you to certain things. Said she wanted to keep the wedding small, simple, peaceful. She said she wanted a drama-free day, and you brought history. His voice cracked slightly on that last word. Claire looked at him then, not angry, not heartbroken, just tired. I didn't push back hard enough, he admitted. I was scared. I thought if I stood up to her, she'd call it off. I thought I could keep peace between both of you, that if I just let it slide, things would settle down. He paused. But they didn't. Claire finally spoke. Her voice was calm even. You let her erase me. Daniel swallowed hard. I did. For a moment, there was only the sound of rain tapping the window. Claire folded another shirt. I found out something yesterday, he said, more hesitantly now. Something I should have known a long time ago. She didn't ask. She waited. Daniel exhaled slowly. She's still been talking to Ben. That made her still just for a second. Ben. The name landed between them like an old wound splitting open. Claire's jaw tightened, but she didn't interrupt. Daniel continued, his words halting now. I saw a message on her iPad. I wasn't snooping. She left it open. It wasn't just a hey, how are you? It was flirty, familiar. She told him she missed talking to someone who really understood her. Said he was the only one who ever really made her laugh. He looked at Claire directly now. I didn't know. I swear, Claire. I wouldn't have if I'd known back then. You would have married her anyway, she said, cutting in for the first time with intention. Not accusing, not emotional, just factual. Daniel dropped his gaze. I don't know, he whispered. They sat in silence again. Claire placed the last folded towel on the pile beside her, then leaned back against the couch. I didn't come here to beg, he said. I needed to tell you I was wrong, that I failed you. As your brother. She studied him. This boy she'd helped raise. The boy who used to beg her to check under his bed for monsters. The man who had become a stranger to keep the peace with someone who couldn't even keep loyalty straight. Finally she said, you knew how much he meant to me. I did, he said, eyes shining. And I let her into our family anyway. And then I helped her push you out of it. He rubbed his face with both hands, ashamed. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I didn't want you to hear about Ben from someone else. Claire nodded once. It was not forgiveness, but it was something. He stood then, not expecting to be asked to stay. I won't bother you again. I just thank you for telling the truth when no one else would. He turned toward the door, then stopped. She never deserved what you gave her, but I did, and I threw it away. Claire remained seated, still and calm. And when the door clicked shut behind him, she closed her eyes for just a moment. Not to cry, but to breathe. Not everything broken needed to be fixed. Some things only needed to be understood. The next day, Claire met Vanessa for coffee. They hadn't sat down like this in months. They chose a small place tucked behind an old bookstore. The kind of cafe where the music was soft and the booths creaked with age. Vanessa ordered chamomile. Claire didn't order anything. She stared at the steam rising from Vanessa's cup and said quietly, I knew. Vanessa looked up. Knew what? Claire's voice didn't waver. That Madison was the girl Ben left me for. I knew it months ago. Vanessa set her tea down slowly. You never said a word. My mother would have told me to let it go. Madison would have played innocent. You've seen it before. How many times have I spoken up only to be told I was overreacting? Vanessa didn't respond. She knew it was true. Claire leaned back in her seat, looking older than usual. Not in a tired way, but in a way that made it clear she'd been carrying things for too long. I didn't cancel the wedding because of what she did to me in the past, Claire continued softly. I canceled it because they didn't even ask why I walked away. They never wanted to hear it. They just assumed I'd take it like always. There was a long silence, heavy but not uncomfortable. Claire continued, I wasn't trying to ruin their lives. That's not what this was. I wasn't out to humiliate them. If anything, I was done pretending they didn't already humiliate me. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. So this wasn't revenge? Claire shook her head. Not in the way people think. I didn't cancel to get back at them. I canceled to stop enabling them. There is a difference. She folded her arms and exhaled deeply. I've spent my life giving people the benefit of the doubt, letting things go, making excuses for everyone but myself. I watched my own brother shrink away from me, just to keep the peace with a woman who didn't even try to hide her contempt. And I let it happen. Vanessa leaned in, her voice low. But when you found out she was still talking to Ben, why not tell him? Claire looked out the window. Because Daniel doesn't learn from warnings. He learns from impact. Vanessa blinked. I've tried, Claire said. All my life I've tried to protect him from our parents' favoritism, from his own blind spots. But he chose her. He chose silence. He chose comfort over truth. And comfort is always louder. Until it disappears. Her fingers tapped the edge of the table once, twice, then stilled. I wasn't going to fight for a place I was never welcome in. I wasn't going to scream or beg or show up uninvited and cause a scene. I just stopped paying for the fantasy. Vanessa nodded slowly. So what now? Claire turned back to her, expression calm. Now he lives with his choices like I lived with mine. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not hurt. I'm just done. A quiet understanding settled between them. No fireworks, no catharsis, just truth. Claire added, almost as an afterthought, it wasn't about the money or the wedding or even Madison. It was about finally stepping out of a role I never agreed to play. She looked Vanessa in the eye. I didn't destroy their wedding. I just stopped holding it up. And with that she stood, gathered her coat, and left before the tea went cold. A month later, Claire received a message from her mother. It was short, too polite to be sincere. Let's have dinner this weekend. Just the three of us. I think it's time. Claire didn't reply. Not right away. She stared at the screen for a moment, then set the phone down without a word. The last time she'd sat at a dinner table with her mother and Daniel, she had been asked to stay quiet, to keep the peace, to let them have their moment. That moment had passed. News of Daniel and Madison's separation had made its way through the family grapevine. The wedding disaster had been only the beginning. What followed, arguments, blame, old truths resurfacing, had torn apart the image they had so desperately tried to build. Apparently Daniel had moved out. Madison had gone silent. No public posts, no couple photos, just absence. It was a quiet collapse. No screaming, no declarations, just the slow erosion of something built on pretense and pride. Claire sat on the porch of Vanessa's house that evening, a glass of water in her hand, watching the sky shift to a burnt orange. Vanessa joined her, settling into the wooden chair with a quiet sigh. They're not doing well, Vanessa said softly. I know, Claire answered, not turning her head. You're not angry? No, Claire said. Not anymore. Vanessa looked at her carefully. You still haven't seen your mom. She invited me to dinner. And Claire let out a small, almost amused exhale. I'm not going. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. You sure? Claire nodded. For the first time in my life, I don't feel like I have to earn my seat at that table. And I don't feel guilty for walking away from it either. There was something settled in her tone. Not bitter, not triumphant, just steady. The kind of stillness that only comes after a storm so loud it leaves nothing but clarity behind. Vanessa reached out and gently touched Claire's hand. I'm proud of you. Claire smiled a soft, private smile. You know what I realized? She said after a long pause. I spent years trying to be accepted by people who had already made up their minds about who I was. I thought if I worked hard enough, gave enough, stayed quiet long enough, eventually I'd be enough. And now I know I was never the problem, Claire said simply. They sat in silence after that, listening to the cicadas hum through the trees. The kind of silence that doesn't need filling. Later, as the sun dipped low and the evening air cooled, Claire said goodbye to Vanessa and took the long way home. She parked her car near the park at the edge of town, a quiet place with winding trails and wide oak trees. She walked slowly without destination, letting her thoughts settle with the rhythm of her steps. Children were playing in the distance, the echoes of their laughter rising and falling like waves. An elderly couple passed her on a bench, hands clasped tightly. The world, as it always did, moved on. Claire paused near a small clearing where the late summer sun filtered through the trees, casting long golden streaks across the path. She tilted her face up toward the light, letting it warm her skin. She closed her eyes. For years she had tried to belong, to be the daughter they praised, the sister they respected, the woman they understood. But now, standing alone in the golden hush of evening, she didn't need any of that. She belonged to herself. And for the first time in her life, that was enough.